So the title of today's talk is, Are You Ready for a Miracle? Are you ready for a miracle? Yes, all right. I love in the meditation that it reminded us that it is God's good pleasure to give us the kingdom. It is God's good pleasure to give us the kingdom. And you know what ours is to do? It's to receive it, and it's to step into it, and it's to live from it. I went to Webster to see what a miracle is. It's an effect or extraordinary event in the physical world that surpasses all known human or natural powers and is ascribed to a supernatural cause. And that's probably how most of us see miracles. And they seem to be something that is so far outside the natural realm that they're unexplainable. But I'm going to talk about miracles in a different way today. But first I want to share with you a story. And this story is from Alan Cohen's book, Handle with Prayer. How many of us have read any of Alan Cohen? Fabulous author. Alan is very easy to read. He has all these stories. He has so many books, and so I would encourage you to pick up one of his books. We've done numerous books in Tuesday morning book study of Alan Cohen's. So this is a story of the king's 4 children. And I shared this story about 4 years ago, but it's pertinent for today as well. So there once was a king, and he ruled a vast kingdom, and he was a benevolent king. He was a kind king. He was very connected to his people, and he really cared about the people, and he cared about the kingdom. And so he was known across the kingdom as just a really good king with a kind and a good heart. Well, he had 4 children that he loved above everybody else. And of course, he and his wife gave these 4 children everything that they could possibly want. There wasn't anything that they didn't have that they could possibly want. Well, the wife died, and about 2 years later, the 4 came to him and said, "We are ready to go out and to discover the world." And the king said, "You have everything that you need right here. What is it that you need to go discover?" And they said, "We just feel that we need to go out and go on some far travels." And so the aides talked with the king and said, "This is normal at this age." And so the children went on, and it made the king very sad. And initially, they kept in contact with him, but with time, that stopped. And so after many years, the king really started praying that his children would come back because he wanted an heir to his kingdom. So finally, a couple of years later, the first princess, Princess Marissa, comes back. But as she's coming in, the king is so excited to see her, but she's dressed in rags. And as she gets closer and he looks in her eyes, he realizes that her eyes are as disheveled as her appearance is. But in his happiness to see her, he says, calls the royal dressmaker and make her the finest of cashmere and silk, and then we're going to have this big feast for her as well. So the dressmaker comes and brings her this beautiful dress, and she throws it off. And then the king wants her to come and eat at this banquet. And she said, "I can't. I'm not worthy. I'm not worthy to have any of this good stuff." And it made the king very sad. A few years passed, and Prince Jason comes. And, he's kind of glad to see that Prince Jason isn't in rags like his sister was. And so, he sees Jason coming. He runs out to him, "So happy that you're here. And again, we're going to get some clothes made for you. We're going to have a great banquet." And so the day of the banquet, the king is walking through the palace, and he, to see how things are going. And he looks in, and he sees Jason, and he's in the kitchen, and he's cutting up vegetables. And he goes into Jason, and he said, What are you doing?" And he said, "Well, I'm preparing the meal for tonight." And he said, "But the meal is for you." And he said, "Oh, I must make sure that everything is good for tonight." And he just kept cutting up. And it made the king very sad because he realized that Jason did not inherit the kingdom. So a few years passed, and Princess Iona comes home. Now, Princess Iona, when the king sees her, he's like relieved, because Princess Iona comes and she's got her royal garb on, and she's on the white horse, and she comes in as one who knows that the kingdom is hers. And so when he sees her, he's so excited, and she goes and she lays on her fine bed, and she comes and she eats at the banquet table, and she roams around the beautiful gardens. And so the king called called her in and he said, Princess Iona, what would you like to have? And she said, I'll have what you have. And he said, well, you can have all that I have, but I want you to create what you want. And she said, oh, no, Father, that's okay. I'll just have what you have. And again, it made the king very sad because he wanted his children to remember and to own the kingdom. So finally, the last prince comes home, and this is let's see. Eric, thank you. So when Eric comes home, the king is just like thrilled because he's got his stuff on, he's got the horses. He comes in with a kind of a knowingness, and he looks and he said, why is Princess Marissa laying on a mat under a bridge? And why is my brother in there cooking in the kitchen? And why is my other sister just out there just laying on the ground, just looking around? And the king said, son, your brother and sisters have forgotten who they are. I have offered them everything I have, including my power to rule my kingdom, but they have become deluded in their travels, and none of them has accepted their full birthright. I am an old man now, and I need to know that my heir will oversee the kingdom as a true leader. Will you live with that authority? To which Eric knelt down and embraced his father and said, my father, I accept all that you have given me. I will act with the love and the power you have imbued in me. I am not your beggar, servant, or just your child. All that you are is in me, and I shall extend your benevolence to all the kingdom through me. So what this represents, the four children represent to us, is the primary identities that we may assume relative to our experience in our relationship with God. We have all been born as heirs to the kingdom. It is the Father's good pleasure to give you the kingdom, but we have traveled to many far countries. Yes, have we traveled to a lot of far countries? We could tell stories about our travels to many of the far countries that we have gone in our lives. And we have adopted beliefs that aren't really true. And they've caused us to live in smaller ways than we were intended to live while we are here on this earthly plane. So each of the four represent a state in consciousness. So the first princess, Marissa, represents the beggar state, or this is when God is outside of us. And so it's in this state that we sincerely believe that there's a God out there up in the heavens, and that we have to do certain things to be under the realm of the goodness of God. We believe we were born into original sin. And I'm going to say the majority of us probably at some point or another had that teaching. If you didn't, you are so blessed that you didn't have to have that teaching. I think most of us are beyond that. The second Prince Jason represents the servant consciousness. Now, this is God in me, and it's a higher consciousness than the beggar consciousness, where you know that you have the right to the riches of the kingdom, but you think you have to work for it. You think that you have to do something to earn it. And the thing that I really want us to get here is the kingdom is freely given. The kingdom is freely given. The kingdom is freely given. You don't have to do anything. You don't have to do anything. The kingdom is always freely given. Okay, the third one, Princess Iona, is, Princess Iona, yes. Okay, this is where I'm a child of God. And, we use this term a lot, child of God, because it's just so hard to get the languaging that really can speak to that there is no separation. And so she represents God through me. And as a child of God, God through me, we're like, yeah, this is great. All of this is mine. But we're not necessarily to the place where we recognize the power that we have within us, that the kingdom is given. And it's given to be utilized through our consciousness as we would desire it to be, which leads us to the fourth one, which is Prince Eric. God as me. I'm not all that God is, but all that I am is God. that we have literally come forth from the one. And Jesus said things like, the Father and I are one. I am in the Father, and the Father is in me. If you have known me, you have known the Father. Of myself I do nothing, but the Father within doeth all the works. And recognize he used the term Father because it was a patriarchal society. So had it not been that, he could be saying Mother. He could be saying, Source, Holy Spirit. But he used that. And that you will do greater works. That you will do greater works. The divine presence is the very essence of our being. And here's the thing. I know we know that. Here, the question is, are we living as it? Are we living from it as it? Are we really living our life in conscious awareness and conscious co-creation with the kingdom? With the kingdom. And I have to say, for probably most of us, like, a little bit I am. But we can be doing it a lot more. And I think that this time calls for us to be living from that a lot more. Ernest Holmes, Science of Mind, says, let us suppose that you are spirit, soul, and body, as the Bible states, and that your spirit is already perfect, an individualized center in the consciousness of God. God has made you out of himself. The only material he had was the substance of his own being. The only mind he had to implant in you was his mind. The only spirit he had to impart was his own spirit. So do you know what that means? You are the substance. You are the mind. You are the spirit. You are that. And there's nobody who isn't that. No matter how they're showing up, there's nobody who isn't that. So what does this possibly have to do with this whole idea of miracles? Well, I thought that I was going to be talking about the supernatural miracles. In fact, I see miracles all the time in my day. And one of the miracles that happened for me was I was working at home and I was going to eat lunch. And I have this habit that when I'm going to eat lunch and I'm by myself there, I have to turn the TV on. So I go in and put my plate on my lap. I turn the TV on and it's Dr. Oz. And his whole show is on unexplained miracles of people's healings. I mean, I called Paul. Oh my gosh, I got to tell you this. I love that. Those kinds of things happen. They're happening all the time to us. Ours is to become in the awareness of it. But I was guided in a different direction. What I want to focus on today is co-creating miracles with the understanding that our mind is God's mind, our body is God's body, our spirit is God's spirit, that we are the very substance of God. So how many of us want to co-create miracles in our lives? Yes, I'm sure we all do. So what is keeping us from doing that very thing? Us, yeah. The knowing, our lack of knowing, I should say, of who we really are. And from that, our lack of being that presence. Again, we get it from an intellectual perspective, but the knowing is the realization. It comes alive in us. That's the realization of it. 2 Corinthians says, so we fix our eyes not on what is seen, but on what is unseen. For what is seen is temporary, but what is unseen is eternal. So the way I want to talk about miracles today is how we can look at whatever is in our life today, and if it's not working for us, we can start utilizing the power that we have within us to affect change. But this first thing says, we fix our eyes on what? On what is seen. We fix our eyes on this and we say, that's it. Look at it. That's what it is. That's what I've been told it is. This is what I've been told that I can do. This is what I'm told I can't do. This is how long I've been told that I can live. This is where I've been told that this disease is going to, all these bad relationships I've had mean that I'm never going to have a good relationship. We fix our eyes on what is seen. But the reality is, as in Hebrews 11:3, by faith we understand that the universe was formed at God's command, so that what is seen was not made out of what was visible. And so what this means is we're talking about the substance here. The very substance of God is responding and is expressing in our life through our consciousness, through what it is that we're focused on most of the time. The experiences that we are having are in direct correlation to this. And I love this. It says, when you concentrate on the effects of your world, you are lowering the vibration of your consciousness, and the lower the vibration, the more difficult it is for good to come forth into manifestation. But when you concentrate on the spirit substance of the great I am within you, you are raising the vibration of your consciousness. And it comes down to our consciousness. Thomas Troward said, having seen and felt the end, you have willed the means to the realization of the end. And he says this God's substance is the means to the realization of the end. In other words, we focus on the desire of our being and we get out of the way, because that part isn't your job. The how, the beautiful way in which it manifests, that's God's job. That's God's job. I don't know if I kept this paper, but I loved it. It said something about, you plant the seed of a tree. You don't have to grow the tree, right? You nurture the environment that it's in, but God grows the tree. This divine intelligence grows the tree. And so many times we get stuck in thinking it has to look like this or it has to go this way, and we want to push it this way, manipulate it this way. And it's like you create the vision and then you give it over. You trust and and you keep feeling the feeling of the end result. Now, what does that mean? It means that when we create a vision, you can be specific in your vision. The main thing you want to get to is the feeling of it, though. So, and I like to use this. You say you want $1 million, but you can't feel the feeling of it. It's really kind of a moot thing. But let's back it up some and say, you know what I could feel right now is I could feel $100,000. What would that feel like to me? Or maybe you can do $1 million. What would that feel like to me? And you go into that place. So let's just say that you're dealing with a health issue. And, you've been given some news that's some not so good news. And it's really hard in those times, isn't it, to not focus on what is? And so what I'm suggesting is that we go into this wonderful place called our imagination, because this is where it is. And our wonderful imagination, pray believing that you've already received it. Pray believing that you've already received it. So you have to have received it. So you go into this place, and for me, what came for me is I would just see myself waking up in the morning, and I would see myself just feeling so good and saying good morning and just getting out of bed. My body feels so good, and I'm stretching, and I'm just so ready for such a beautiful day. And I see myself going about what I would go about in the morning, and I tell myself I'm going to go through this day with an open heart, a heart filled with love and kindness and compassion, and connection and oneness and hope and truth and peace and joy, and that my body is filled with energy and it's filled with stamina. My body is whole, and I'm so grateful for this wonderful movement in my body. And when I get to the end of my day and it's time for me to go to bed, I see myself just putting my head on my pillow and very shortly falling into the most restorative, restful, regenerative sleep. And then I see myself again waking up in the morning, and I feel great. And I say, oh, I feel so fantastic today. This is so wonderful. And I get up and I feel so good. And I move into my day with an open heart. But you got to do it over and over and over and over and over and over until you believe it. And then you got to do it more. Because we want that to be our loudest vibration. We get out of the how. And here's the thing about this, you guys. So many times in our thinking, we're so anti-Western medicine that the very thing that may bring that about for us, we dismiss. And so all I'm saying is be open, because the next step is going to be there. That's grace. That's guidance. I love, Abraham said one time, if you're focusing on having perfect vision, and you're focused on that, and you're focused on that, and somebody offers you free LASIK, for your eyes, and you say, no, thank you. It's going to come about in another way. It's like, there it is. And make peace with it. And, that's the biggest thing. Make peace with it and embrace it and be grateful for it and say, thank you, God, because this is the answer to what I'm looking for. Tomorrow's Martin Luther King Jr. Day, and I sat and I read his I Have a Dream, and it was so incredibly inspiring. And I know that each of us has a dream. I know looking at him, he held on to that dream. And the unfoldment of that dream, as you look at it, did it go smooth? No, it didn't. There were bumps and dips and craziness, but he held on. He held on, and many others held on to that vision. And so this is what we're called to do today, whether it be a personal thing in our life. And I want to address the bigger thing that's happening this week that for many of you, you're so happy about, and that is so great. But I also know in talking to many of you, what is somebody else's dream has become, for many of us, kind of a nightmare. And what I want to say is, you guys, we've got to shift. We have to shift. We have to move away from the fear. We have to move away from the judgment. And we have to start focusing on our dream. Now, this does not mean for me that I support some of this stuff. I can't. My values cannot line up with that. But it does mean that I can still send love and keep my vision going. I can go back to my vision over and over and over again. And it's just, today I have a dream. I have a dream that love, the one and only power, rises up in each of us until we fully become its essence. I have a dream that love will melt away the fear, the separation, the division, the hate, the greed, the judgment, the dishonesty, and the power. I have a dream that one day we will walk in oneness with each other and we will celebrate our differences. And I have a dream that together we will create a world that works for everyone. That's what I have to hold on to. That's my vision. That's my knowing. And you know what? It doesn't mean you don't stand for things. Stand for what is important to you. Advocate for what is important to you. The difference I want to say here is I want to encourage you, don't stand against. Because when we stand against, we give that the power. But we stand for our values, and we stand strong for what our values are, and equality, and for goodness, and for everything that we know that God is. We presence that. And we presence it in every relationship, in every conversation, in everything that we write on social media. We shift, and we become the very thing that we would like to see our country become and our world become. Amen? Amen. Yeah, absolutely. We have the power, you guys. We have the power. We do. We have the power to change this world. And it's going to take each and every one of us going, okay, I am the kingdom. It is right here. And now I am ready. I am ready to presence all of its goodness. And so it is, and so it shall be. And as my beautiful Harry says, I love each and every one of you. Namaste. Namaste.